Descendant video. I first wanted to say thank you guys so much for all the support recently. I did not expect to get this much support and this much growth when I started making videos on the first Descendant, and I'm very glad that I am. I'm so appreciative. I cannot thank you guys enough, and I love you all for all the support, and I will continue to make better and better content as time goes on and I improve myself. So thank you guys again for all the support. Thank you for the 1.2 thousand subs. I obviously wouldn't be able to do this without you guys, so thank you again, and let's not waste any more time and get straight into the video. Now, first things first, we're going to go over the Descendant abilities. So we're going to talk about all the abilities that Kyle has and how they interact and how you should use his abilities when you're in endgame content. We're going to go here, Descendant module. So we're actually going to start with the passive here, because the passive has a very important skill in it, or a very important mechanic that I want to explain to you guys, so that way you understand it when I'm explaining the abilities. So the passive says, max amount of magnetic force increases proportionally to max shield. That means the more shield you have on Kyle, the more magnetic force you can gain. Now this is going to be important to remember for when we get into the mods and a couple of their abilities. When the shield is fully consumed, you gain magnetic care. This effect has a cooldown. The cooldown, as you can see on the top right, is 56.1 seconds with my mods, but originally is 300. Magnetic force gradually decreases while out of combat. Now, what magnetic care does is it's going to give you intervals of your max shield and your max magnetic force. So basically, every second you're going to get a large portion of shield and a large portion of magnetic force being given back to you every time you break your shield when it's off 56-second cooldown. And if you want to check real quick how you can see if it's off cooldown, if you look on the right side next to my fourth ability, you'll see that there is a smaller icon, and that is the cooldown for your magnetic care. The duration of magnetic care is 10 seconds, and the recovery interval is every second. As I said, the shield recovery is your max shields times 8% modifier, so whatever shield you have on Kyle times 8%, and the magnetic force recovery is the max magnetic force, which is based off of your max shield times 8%. Now we're going to move on to the first ability, which is called Repulsion Dash. Kyle is a non-attribute Descendant, which means all of his abilities scale off non-attribute, and he has tech and dimension skills. His first and fourth ability are his tech skills, and his second and third ability are his dimension skills. Repulsion Dash charges forward to deal damage and inflict knockback on colliding enemies. Dealing damage to enemies recovers magnetic force proportionally to max shield. When the skill ends, grants defense plus to self. So essentially what this is saying is that every time you Repulsion Dash into an enemy, you're going to gain a good portion of your magnetic force bar. Okay. Now, when you start into a fight or you load into a zone, you're going to have 0 magnetic force. This is the first way to build up your magnetic force. All you have to do is Repulsion Dash into an enemy, and you'll have enough to activate your third ability. Not only that, but you also get 150% defense increase every time you Repulsion Dash. The duration of this defense is 5 seconds, and you get 3 stacks of Repulsion Dash. And what I mean by stacks is you basically just get 3 Repulsion Dashes, so they all have the same cooldown. So it's a 2.2 second cooldown with the mods I have on now. You have 3 stacks or 3 charges, so 3 times 2.2 is going to get you 6.6. So it's going to take 6.6 seconds for you to fully charge all 3 of your Repulsion Dashes. You have a max move distance of 10 meters, which means the charge itself goes 10 meters. The damage is your skill power times 432.7% modifier, and the damage range is 1.5 by 1.5 meters. The max expandable range is 200%. Now, we don't run any range mods on Kyle, but if you were to, the max you could get to would be 3 meters by 3 meters. The magnetic force recovery is your max shield times 30% modifier. So 30% of your max shield is how much magnetic force you're going to gain from hitting an enemy with Repulsion Dash. Your second ability is a non-attribute dimension, and it's called Magnetic Bulwark. Extends both hands to create a barrier in front that blocks enemy ranged attacks. Every time the barrier blocks an attack, recovers magnetic force proportional to the damage blocked. The cooldown on this is 0.4 seconds for me, so I can basically pop it as soon as it goes away. The downside to this is that it consumes 5% of your max shield every second. So every second you're holding this barrier out, you're losing 5% of your shield. The max range is capped at 2 meters by 3 meters. The HP of the shield is based off 50% of your max shield, and the defense of it is based off 100% of your defense. The duration is 8 seconds, or until your shield runs out, or until it's broken. So there's 3 ways that it can be ended. Either you run out of duration, the shield gets broken by enemy attacks, or you run out of shield and you cannot hold it any longer. And the magnetic force recovery is equal to 100% of the damage dealt by enemies. Now, a quick tip that I want to tell you, and I can show you in the clip right here, is that you can actually revive your teammates while you have Magnetic Bulwark up. So the way you would do this is you activate Magnetic Bulwark using your second ability key, and then you start rezzing. And when you turn your camera, it's going to turn the shield however you turn. If you turn left, right, up, down, it is going to adjust the shield accordingly, and you can res with your shield up. This can be very helpful when you get into in-game content and there's ads swarming or the boss is shooting at you when you have a downed teammate. So make sure you keep this in mind when you're playing Kyle, because this is very important, and this shield does build up magnetic force very, very fast. Next, we have a non-attribute dimension skill, Magnetism Spurt. The skill description is when hit by enemies in the Magnetism Spurt state, magnetic force is consumed instead of shield and HP. Essentially, this is saying you're invulnerable as long as you have magnetic force charge when you have Magnetism Spurt active. When all magnetic force is consumed, or by interacting with the skill button again, discharges magnetic force to deal damage. This does an AoE blast, and it actually does quite a bit of damage. I can show you guys in the range when we get to that how much damage it actually does. It's actually a good bit of damage, even if there's not a lot of magnetic force consumed. And when the skill ends, restore shields to nearby allies proportional to max shield. So basically, what the last part is saying is that when you disable the skill, or when you activate it again, or when you run out of magnetic force, the blast radius, if your ally is in it, it's going to replenish their shield based off 100% of your max shields. So this can be useful. It's not the most useful ability that Kyle has, and this is not what you use Magnetism Spurt for, but keep that in mind. If your teammate is dying and you do want to replenish his shields, you have this available. You can activate it and then reactivate it very quickly to do a little burst, and then you will replenish their shields based off 100% of your shields, which is going to be really high because you're going to build into shields for Kyle. So if you look here, the cooldown on it is 2.8 seconds. This is a really insane cooldown. You basically always have this up, and this is what makes Kyle such an S tier in game. He cannot die if you manage your magnetic force properly. It's insane how much damage you can take and the rotation you can do. You're almost invincible if you do this correctly. Now the magnetic force cost is your max magnetic force times 2%. The duration is 15 seconds. So if you do not run out of magnetic force and you do not reactivate the ability after 15 seconds, the Magnetism Spurt is going to end regardless, and you're going to get that burst damage AoE, and you'll keep the magnetic force that you had left over that will not drain. Now the skill power, or the damage, is based off your skill power times a 702.8% modifier. Additional damage is consumed magnetic force. So if you had a full bar of magnetic force, you're going to get a big chunk of additional damage as opposed to a low bar of magnetic force. So it's the consumed magnetic force times 508.6%. The damage range is 5 meters. The max expendable range would be 10 meters, but we don't do range. And ally shield recovery amount, as I said before, is your max shields times 100%. And then you get a little 25% damage reduction, or 25% boost to defense, basically, which is also pretty nice to have. Now for Kyle's fourth ability and his best ability, this is the strongest single hitting ability in all of the first Descendant. This is a non-attribute tech, and it's called Super Conductivity Thrusters. You basically have a Thunder Crash from Destiny 2, and you're going to fly into the enemy and do insane amounts of damage. And now, again, I will show this to you in the range. I will display this not only in clips, but also right here. I'm going to show you exactly what it does and how easy it is to activate this ability. So Super Conductivity Thrusters soar into the air, descend, colliding with enemies and dealing damage upon impact. So it does have a blast radius, but it's very small because we don't do range. Damage increases proportionally to the amount of magnetic force consumed. So this is similar to Magnetism Spurt. You would preferably activate this ability with a full bar of magnetic force, but you do not have to. You still get really good damage. When the skill ends, magnetic force is fully consumed. So essentially what this means is whatever magnetic force you had in your bar, even if it was only 30%, which is the minimum to activate this ability, it's going to consume all of it when you hit the ground. Now, a quick little tip with this as well. Bosses that are in immune phases, like the Executioner when he has his back showing, or any boss in an immunity phase, but they have like these little cores that you can shoot, this ability does not work. So do not use this ability when they're in their immunity phase. Even if there is a core or a part you can break, it will not work in these phases. Now, if you accidentally press this ability, but you don't want to use all of your magnetic force and they're in an immunity phase, if the timing was bad, you can actually reactivate this ability to drop straight to the ground and only use the magnetic force you used while you were gliding around. So this is a really nice tip. You will have to cool down the skill, so you won't have it available right away, but our cooldown's only 11.2 seconds, so it's really not that big of a deal. It's much more worth to save the magnetic force rather than do no damage. And if we look here real quick before we move on, the reason this ability does so much damage is because it's going to take our base skill power and it's going to multiply it by 11,207.7%. The additional damage is going to be the amount of magnetic force consumed times a 7,809.8% modifier. And remember, our shields are going to increase the amount of magnetic force we can have, which then increases the amount of magnetic force we consume. So this is why building into shields is so important for Kyle, because you have all of this extra damage coming from your shields along with the shields. Now the downside is that shields are very weak in the first Descendant, so we have a couple things that we add into our build to help us survive, because survivability can be rough in certain encounters. The max range is, like I said before, is a radius of 5 meters. The max expendable range is 10 meters, and the duration is 6 seconds. So the max you can stay in the air, and this is not increasable by duration mods. The max you can stay in the air is for 6 seconds. Now that pretty much covers everything for the abilities and the breakdown of them. Hopefully you guys understood that. If you didn't, please feel free to use the comment section and ask me any questions you like. I will be answering every comment that I see, and I will give you guys any information that I didn't explain very well or you're not understanding. And then really quickly, we're going to go into the range here. We're going to load up a bot. We're going to put him on level 100, of course. 100, level 1, or 1 enemy. Here, turn it really off, and then on. And I'm just going to show you guys really quickly how much damage we do just by building up. I'm going to use this support droid, and I'm going to build up my magnetic force to 100. I'm going to activate my super conductivity thrusters and show you exactly how much damage we do. So on a direct hit, we did 1.56 million damage. Okay. Now there's a little tip that you can use, or a little trick, I guess I should say, that helps you get an extra little burst of damage. And what you're going to do is we're going to rebuild our magnetic force again. Now, before you activate super conductivity thrusters, if you activate Magnetism Spurt, your third ability, you're going to get an extra burst of damage on impact. So you see I activate the Magnetism Spurt, and you see right there, I got an extra 156k burst damage just by activating Magnetism Spurt. Now the reason for this is because when we land, we consume all of our magnetic force from super conductivity thrusters, and as Magnetism Spurt said, every time your full magnetic force bar is consumed, you're going to burst with a significant amount of damage, and 150k is a lot of extra damage just by doing nothing. You're not adding anything else to the rotation really. You just activate this right before you activate super conductivity thrusters, so it's no harm to you. You just get a free extra 150k. And then if you wanted to show you guys Magnetism Spurt by itself, now I'm going to activate it and then turn it right off. So I'm going to show you the instant burst damage capability, and this is what you would do if there's ads around you annoying you. I'm literally going to activate it and then reactivate it, and you'll see the damage. 110,000 damage just by simply pressing my key twice, and as you can see, it's off cooldown almost instantly. It's a crazy ability. It's honestly, these two abilities are some of the strongest abilities in the first Descendant, and they synergize so well together. Kyle's kit is just so well made. He's so much fun to play, and his damage capability is insane. Now, I do want to say that when you're playing Kyle, he is going to be sort of a glass cannon. Now, you have amazing survivability because your Magnetism Spurt makes you invulnerable when you have Magnetism Spurt active and magnetic force in your bar. And as you can see, when it's active, it slowly drains my magnetic force. And if I was to be getting hit by enemies, it would drain even more. But yes, you do have this invulnerability, but you have to keep in mind that when you use your super conductivity thrusters, which is your big damage, you're going to lose all of this magnetic force, which means you can't reactivate your Magnetism Spurt again. So your survivability goes way down, and you're going to be in the face of the boss. Now this can be troublesome for some bosses because sometimes they have AoE attacks, like the Swamp Thing or the Swamp Monster. He has his little poison attack that will instantly one-shot you. So my recommendation, if you're gonna, when you go in for the boss, you activate Magnetism Spurt and then you activate super conductivity thrusters. I'm gonna show you exactly what I do right after I do this, so I can try to ensure the best chance of me getting out alive. So Magnetism Spurt, thrusters, and as soon as I land, I'm gonna activate Repulsion Dash, gain a little bit of charge, and activate Magnetism Spurt again. Now this gives me a little bit of time and invulnerability to get away from the boss. So this is your best bet of getting out alive. Now, sometimes if you know the mechanics or the boss is down on the ground after breaking apart or something, and you know you can walk away free, you don't have to do this, but keep in mind you are always going to want to build up free magnetic force anytime you can. So if the boss is down on the ground, and I'm going to show you guys some gameplay, basically meleeing the boss, not basically, I am literally meleeing the boss, and I'm going to show you how I keep up the survivability while doing that. Now this does take knowledge of the mechanics because I do know when he'll do his one shot and when I need to have my Magnetism Spurt up. So if you know the mechanics of the boss though, you are able to get up close and personal and honestly just throw the boss around. So Yeah, you just build up your force. You want to do a burst damage, activate Magnetism Spurt. You want to do, even without a full bar, as you can see here, only 30%. We're still going to do 1.5 million. So with the minimum requirement of 30% magnetic force, we still do 1.5 million damage. It's honestly insane. It's crazy. Now that I've given you guys a rundown of the abilities and shown you a little showcase of the damage and the rotation in which you would use these abilities, I'm now going to get into the mods. So it took me a long time, honestly, to figure out exactly how I wanted to mod Kyle, because as I said before, there was some survivability issues. You also wanted to keep the damage. You wanted to play into his kit, which is shield. So this is what I came up with, and this, in my opinion, is honestly the best way you can mod him. And if you guys have any recommendations or other ways you mod him, feel free to leave that in the comment section below. I always love seeing other people's builds. But this is the best I could come up with, and it took me a long time. Now I have two formas or crystallizations in Kyle. So if you go to module, additional settings, assign module socket, see the crystallization catalyst. I have two. I have a cerulean and a rutile, along with the two malachite that come with him. So this is a two forma build. It still isn't enough to fit everything that I want. So I'm going to give you guys a couple adjustments you can make based on the amount of space that you have. Now I do not have an energy activator in Kyle. So if this is your main Descendant and you have this energy activator in here that brings you up to 76, I'm not level 40 right now because I formed, but if I was level 40, I'd have 80 capacity. You should be in a very good spot to have all the mods that you could possibly need in here. Now, obviously, you can keep forming as you go. And when I say former, I'm referring to the crystallization catalyst. It's just an easier word to say. So if you have an energy activator and Kyle is your main Descendant, obviously put that in here because that's going to help you out a lot. So let's just jump straight into the mods. Let's start from left to right. So let's start with the submodule slot. Now for the submodule slot, you can literally put anything in here. It's whatever melee you like best. Keep in mind that there are these in-game grapples or these in-game submodules that allow you to, like this one, grapple onto thin air. There's the increased range one, which is my favorite and the personal one that I would recommend for everybody because the range is very, very nice to have. The grappling hook can be a little finicky and the range is very short. So keep that in mind, but you can put any melee or any submodule in here. The only recommendation I would give to you is to make sure that you upgrade it as much as you possibly can because this does give you extra capacity. The amount that you upgrade it is equal to the amount that you get in capacity, right? So the more upgraded, the more capacity. Then we have increased shield. Now, as I said before, Kyle requires shield. The reason he requires shield is because it plays into all of his mechanics, as I explained to you before. So it's very important that you do have shield on Kyle, even though shield is not the best in the first Descendant. It is very weak compared to defense and health, but this shield is very important for most of his mechanics. So this is just, there's nothing else to really explain here other than you get 151% max shield. Now this max shield does increase the damage of your super conductivity thrusters. It increases the amount of magnetic force you can hold, and it increases the damage of magnetism spurt. So overall, it's amazing. Oh, and it also increases the magnetic force. It just literally increases everything overall. So having more shield enhances every single one of your abilities. And then we have focus on tech. Focus on tech, we're mainly using this for the skill cooldown. The skill power modifier doesn't actually give us much damage because when you look at how big the number is, 11,000, you're adding, it's not giving us that much more damage, but we're using this for the cooldown. The most important thing to focus on with Kyle, besides having shield, is your cooldowns. So because Kyle doesn't use any mana, whatever you like to say, MP, because he doesn't use MP, and it's all based off his magnetic force, you can reduce, for instance here, MP conversion, you can reduce your MP, and everything is based off a cooldown. So the faster your abilities are available, the more you can use them. You can literally spam abilities because there's nothing stopping you from spamming them except for cooldowns. So that's why we go for the focus on tech and the focus on non-attribute, which we'll get to in a minute. So focus on tech, as I said, we're using this for the skill cooldown, but you do get a nice little 45.2% skill power modifier. Doesn't do much, but it does something. Then we have nimble fingers, again, skill cooldown, as I explained before. MP conversion, once again, skill cooldown. And then we have focus on non-attribute. Now, this does give us a significant portion of damage. The damage base would be 966,000, but with the focus on non-attribute, this bumps up to 1.54 million. Now, if you wanted to use non-attribute specialist, which I would not recommend because the 6.1% cooldown, as I said, is very important. But if you do not have this mod and you can only slot non-attribute specialist, and let me show you what that is now. if you can only slot non-attribute specialist, you will get 300k more damage. But overall, it's just worse because of the cooldown. The 300k isn't that much in the grand scheme of things because you're doing so much damage and the cooldowns are giving you more damage. So you're getting more DPS because of the cooldowns, you know. So the 300k doesn't make up for the amount of cooldown you get. But again, if you do not have focus on non-attribute and you can't be asked to farm it or you just can't get it, for now, focus on non-attribute specialist because this is a good backup for it. And then we have Iron Will. So I decided to slot in Iron Will because, as I stated, Kyle has a survivability issue, especially since he's so up close and personal with these hard mode bosses. Now, when your shield breaks, which it is going to break, and this is good because it activates Magnetic Care, which is actually very good for us. We like Magnetic Care, and it's on a 56-second cooldown, so it's active pretty often. But since our shield is going to be breaking pretty often, and defense is so strong in the first Descendant, for early game content, you don't need to focus on defense. It's not that big of a deal, but for end game, you definitely do want to focus on defense. So I decided to slot this in because my shield is always going to be breaking, and we're going to be getting that Magnetic Care. I also want this nice 97.3% increase to my defense. Now, I don't have enough capacity, otherwise it'd be maxed out, which I think is 113% or something. But this mod actually turned out to be really good. This helped my survivability a lot. So slotting in Iron Will was one of the best mods that I slotted into Kyle, and I tried all types of different mods. This is the way to go. So make sure that you get this Iron Will. It's worth farming. It can be a pain in the ass. Right? It took me literally 2.5 hours doing this mission, but it is worth getting. So that's going to be the main end game boss build for Kyle. Now, there's other mods that you can slot in. For instance, let me back out of here and let me show you guys a couple other mods. Now, weighing the scales, I don't actually have it. So weighing the scales gives you some extra shield. Now, there is no skill cost. Remember, there's no MP for Kyle. So this is basically just a free extra shield. If you have weighing the scales and you have the space to put it in, this would be your next best in slot. So you would put weighing the scales into here. So again, if you have the space, you would throw weighing the scales anywhere around here. And as you can see, we don't have any of the same mod, right? That's a unique mod here. So we are able to slot it with everything we have. So if you have weighing the scales, again, make sure you slot that in if you have the space for it. But that's not the most important. So that's why I didn't put weighing the scales in here. Everything else I have here is more important than that. And the reason weighing the scales is going to be so nice to slot in, as I was saying before, is because you get that increase the shield. Increase the shield means increase the magnetic force, etc., etc. I'm on repeat here. I think by now you understand it. So yeah, aside from weighing the scales, if you have extra space, if you're just going crazy and you want to completely deck out Kyle, you want to format everything, have as much space as possible, you would just go for more defense. Whatever defense mods you can get, you have Iron Defense, which gives you the defense percentage plus the skill power modifier. Now, the skill power modifier won't really affect you much, but again, we're going for this extra defense here because defense scales so well in high end game content. It's very nice to have. It keeps you alive a lot. So if you had more space, start throwing on defense mods. If you run out of defense mods, the next thing you're going to go to is this HP. So you start doing HP mods. You could just do a normal increased HP mod right here. Yeah, so that's basically going to cover everything you need to know for the in-game boss build or just in-game hard mode content. Anything that's very difficult and requires survivability along with damage. This is the mod setup that you're going to want to bring in. As I said, I spent so much time trying to figure this out and perfect it. So as I said before, if you have any adjustments that or any recommendations you want to make, or maybe the way you build it, let me know in the comment section. I love seeing other people's builds and I like to see what you guys come up with. So now we moved on to the daily content or the ad clearing build for Kyle. So this also translates into end game hard mode. It's just going to be for more activities where there's a bunch of ads that you want to group up. Now, I failed you guys. I tried for 2 days. I tried to get this mod. I went in and farmed the swamp over and over and over. I sat here and I fought this boss on hard mode over and over. And I can actually show you guys. I was doing it before I decided to make this video, as you can see by my modules. And I got every single Transcendent mod to drop besides Kyle's. At least the one I needed for Kyle. I tried my best though. In the Transcendent mod that I'm talking about, I'm going to show you guys in access info. Self-directed Eruption. Consumes magnetic force every second when used to pull enemies in front of Kyle. Deals great damage to nearby enemies when the skill ends. So what this is saying is that when you activate Magnetism Spurt, you're going to pull the enemies around you in, and then you're going to burst with the burst of damage that we talked about before. So what this does is it just helps grouping ads, and then you do that big burst of damage we talked about, which is going to absolutely nuke the ads. So this could be really fun to use and really convenient to have for any sort of high mob type of mission where there's going to be mobs running around and enemies that you just want to pull in and kill really quickly. As I said, guys, I promise you I tried to get this, but I didn't want to wait too much longer on the Kyle video. I have a bunch of people asking for it, so I just decided to bite the bullet and put it out there without this. So yeah, and for the module setup here, it's relatively similar to the endgame one. As you can see, what we did is drop focus on tech because, as I said, the focus on tech modifier doesn't give us much damage, but we are going to get 6.1% cooldown increase. We lose that minus 6.1%, but that's okay because it's well worth it for the skill module or the Transcendent mod for Kyle. Superconductive bombing is not good. Diamagnetic Bulwark is also not good. You're way too slow when using this. These definitely need some buffs before they're any good. This has bad tracking on the balls that it sprays out. It's not as fun to use. This is just, both of these are all around L's to use in my opinion. So I would not recommend these. But the only thing we changed is drop the focus on tech, and you would slot in the Eruption Transcendent mod. And yeah, that would be your build. Now to clarify a couple things that I was asked in my early game Kyle build, such as why not use Technician, why use focus on tech over NA Specialist. NA Specialist is not an attribute specialist, etc, etc. Well, as I stated before, NA Specialist gives you a 30,000 damage increase, but you lose the 6.1% cooldown. The 30,000 damage does not lead to more DPS than the 6.1% cooldown, so that's why you don't use NA Specialist or non-attribute Specialist over focus on tech. Now, focus non-attribute is 1.54 million. Focus non-attribute plus focus tech is 1.54 million. So you keep the same amount of damage, you get a very small increase. Now, NA Specialist or non-attribute Specialist plus focus on tech and the shield mod gives you 1.65 million damage. A non-attribute Specialist gives a 1.57 million damage by itself. So as I said before, you get a little bit of a damage increase using non-attribute Specialist, but the cooldown is much more important. So that's the reasons why you would not use non-attribute Specialist over focus on non-attribute. And for those of you that were wondering how much damage adding the extra shield or the increased shield mod, you actually get 110,000 or approximately 110,000 damage for adding on the shield mod along with the extra shield and the survivability and all of the other mechanics it ties into. So that's why it's very important to have this increased shield mod. And now that I'm sure you guys have had enough of me yapping about these little modules here, we're going to move on to the fun stuff. The damage dealers, okay? What we use to deal our damage besides our abilities. That's going to be our weapons. I do not prefer to use a shotgun. However, my reactor is not best suited. There's definitely more that I want to get, and I'm going to be farming more of these. However, I do have a skill cooldown modifier and a skill critical hit damage on this one, so that's why I use it. Now, I don't need to use my heavy because all of my damage is coming from my tamer. The tamer is the highest boss DPS in the game, so 99% of my weapon damage is coming from the tamer. 1% coming from the Nazistra's Devotion, and I'll explain why I use this in a minute. And then the rest of my damage is coming from my abilities. Obviously, that's where a majority of my damage comes from, is my abilities. So the shotgun is just to reach the optimization condition to get that 140% skill power. The Nazistra's Devotion, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but I'll call it Devotion. That's how I refer to it. I use this for one thing in specific, and if you click F1, go to Unique Ability, I use it for Devotion Mark. So on hitting an enemy's weak point, inflicts the unique ability Devotion Mark on the target enemy. Devotion Mark gives a 10% defense debuff at base, and I do need to upgrade this. I will be upgrading this. And what I mean by upgrading is if you consume another devotion into this, you can do that 4 times and get the max stacks or max potency from its unique ability. And it would increase the duration in the defense debuff. So it's very important to do that. It's nice to have more than 3 seconds, but I make do with what I have now. So that defense debuff is nice because you can constantly apply it. So as soon as that 3 seconds is up for the debuff, I can reapply it right away. Now I don't constantly have this up. The uptime isn't constant, But I will use this debuff when I'm going to go in for super conductivity thrusters, or if I see my teammates are using high damage abilities like Glaze, using their rocket launchers, etc. So just, you're going to time this to use it whenever you feel like's best. And remember, you're going to get the minus 10% defense on whatever you hit, or the boss's weak point. And the build for it, very simple. I don't have anything upgraded, just action and reaction and rifling reinforcement. I don't use this for damage, it's just for the debuff. And then here, this is the bad boy. This is what gets you your damage. This is where you see the numbers, okay? So if you go to my tamer, you see I get 378.759 DPS. So 378,000 damage per second. What you would do here is you would take weak point sight and switch it for weak point insight. I still don't believe that I have it, which is why I haven't changed it. And I can't believe I haven't got this mod to drop. But yeah, I don't have weak point insight, but you would trade weak point sight for weak point insight. Other than that, everything else stays the same here. You have rifling reinforcement for the firearm attack, fire rate from fire rate up, weak point damage. Again, you would trade this to weak point insight, firearm critical hit rate and weak point damage, the firearm attack and recoil. The recoil is not that bad. You're going to be all right. And then your enhancement would be whatever boss you're going against. So if you're going up against a boss that's weak to electric, use electric enhancement. If you're going up against a boss that's weak to toxin, use toxic enhancement. I'll show you these here. They're all called enhancements. Fire enhancement, toxic enhancement, fire enhancement, toxic enhancement, chill enhancement. Use whichever one you need to use for the boss. And that's my build for my tamer. Now we're going to jump into the reactors. So the reactor that you ideally want is called a materialized mechanics reactor. This is going to be non-attribute skill power ratio boost and tech skill power boost ratio. So for the optimization condition, it depends on whatever weapon you decide to use. Now, if you didn't know, optimization conditions come in all different shapes and forms. So you have the machine gun optimization, which I have here. This one actually is better in terms of the damage that I get for my 1 and my 4, but the bonuses are not as good. The skill critical hit damage and the skill cooldown, I think, outweigh the little bit of boost to the damage I get. However, this is not a bad reactor at all. I could slot this in here. All right. So the optimization condition is basically just telling you what weapon you have to run. So if the optimization condition is a hand cannon, you must have a hand cannon equipped to get the 140% skill power boost. Now, this is very crucial that you meet this optimization condition because this is what makes these go over the top. It's very important to reach the optimization condition. Along with reaching the optimization condition, the substats at the bottom are also very important. So if we go over here to, let's go to this one. If I scroll down, you see underneath the skill power when equipped, I have singular skill power boost ratio, 0.064x. And what this translates to is a percentage, and the percentage is 6.4%. The skill critical hit rate is 27.6. That's easy. No need to translate there. Toxic skill power boost ratio, 0.06. This translates to a 6%. And 0.078. This is going to be a 7.8%. So these substats are very important to pay attention to as well, because these are the little boost, the little nudge to make it the best reactor you can get. So this is what farming reactors is for. You can always get these optimization condition and the skill power boost ratios to match. It's not that difficult to get, but having really great substats is where your reactor is going to shine. So it takes some farming, it takes some time. As you see, I saved some of the important ones here. Toxic skill power boost ratio, skill critical hit damage, the skill cooldown and skill critical hit damage, which is the one I just took off. Now, again, I had the shotgun on because I met the requirement. However, I would like to use a sniper. I haven't got a good sniper one yet. So again, whatever optimization condition meets your playstyle. If you like the shotgun, then this would be a great one for you. If you like to use a beam rifle, then you need to find one with an optimization condition that says beam rifle. Okay. Again, it's very important that you meet the optimization condition. This is a big boost to your damage and a big boost to your skill power. So keep that in mind when picking a reactor. And for the external components, you're going to want to go for defense and shield. Defense, shield, defense, shield. That's what Kyle's bread and butter is, okay? So you want the shield first, and then when you don't have shield or you can't get any more shield, go for defense. Remember, defense is very good. You do need to build into defense. So as you can see here for mine, I went into mostly defense. Here I have a max HP one, so I get 646 HP, but that's because I get 3,575 defense as the substat on this one. So I'm getting defense and health for this one, so I'm okay with that trade-off. So the main focus on these external components is going to be your substats. Obviously, the main stats are nice, such as the defense, the health, the shield, etc. But the substats are very nice. As you can see here, I go for resistances, and that's because I don't have space in my build to mod for resistance. And If you do have space in your build, I would highly recommend modding for resistance because it's very important in endgame content. But since I don't have the space to build for that, I use my external components to make up for that. So as you can see here, I get 2,196 resistance along with 3,500 defense. Here I get 4,600 defense, but 3,814, chill resistance. And I get the 3,500 defense plus the 600 HP just to give me that little boost. And then here I have the 3,450 toxin resistance. Now for this slot, I do have, I don't want to scroll through all these right now. I didn't get to delete them when I was going through the swamp monster. But here you go, right here. I have the 3,544 electric resistance. This is usually what I'd slot in here. But I wanted, usually I'd slot this in. But as you can see, I get less HP and I don't get that 3,500 defense. So I kind of went with slotting in the annihilation memory when I'm not going up against an electric focused boss. So if I was going up against something like the executioner, I would slot in the HP support memory. But when I'm not going against anything that does electric damage, I'm going to have the annihilation memory slotted in. Now the annihilation set is actually the best set to have with Kyle. Because Kyle has no MP, he does not get affected by the minus 22% MP recovery. And with the annihilation set, you get firearm attack increased proportionally to the ratio of max HP to HP lost, up to 26%. And when your HP is 50% or lower, your MP recovery is minus 22%. Again, that's not a problem for Kyle because he doesn't have MP, but your HP recovery is plus 16.4%. So basically what you're getting here for free is a 16.4% HP recovery for 10 seconds. Now it's on a 30-second cooldown, but the extra damage and the HP recovery is very nice because it has no negative effect on Kyle, again, because he does not use MP. So the Annihilation set is so far the best that I found to build for Kyle. So if you can get your hand on this by doing the Devourer in hard mode, do that. These are very good sets. Now that we've gone over my external components and I've explained to you guys why I've slotted these external components in and the reason I've modded this way, I want you guys to remember, and I want to tell you guys one more time, to make sure that you're focusing on defense and max shield. I have 2 max HPs, but ideally I would want a max defense or a defense here and a shield. The HP is just nice because when you get rezzed, if you have such low HP, you do go right back down. However, the defense giving you that damage reduction is going to save you more than the HP or the shield. So again, focus on shield and defense. In these, you could slot in a lot of defense mods. You could just drop the shield because the shield's 275. It's not anything crazy. But remember that your shield does play into your mechanic for Kyle. So pick and choose. Just make sure you're going for defense and shield. Those are the 2 options that you want to go for. And now that I've explained everything that I can in depth, the best way I know how to for Kyle, that's going to be the end of this video. Now, if there's any questions, concerns, anything you have at all, the comment section is always open, and I'm always in the comment section responding to any and everything you guys have to ask or say. Once again, I wanted to thank you guys for all the support. It means the world to me. I really do appreciate it, and hopefully we can grow together. I know I have a lot of improvement to make on my videos. I'm working on it. Every time I make a new video, I'm making sure that I improve in little aspects, whether that's the thumbnail, the recording, the editing, the voiceover. I'm always trying to improve in some way, and if you guys have any constructive criticism for me, feel free to leave that in the comment section as well. I don't mind it at all. I love it. It helps me be better for you guys. So thank you guys again for that. Also, don't forget that I do stream live over on Twitch at twitch.tv/EEFANN, and my TikTok is EEFANNFPS, so EFANFPS. That's also my Twitter handle or my X handle. I don't use that as often. So if you guys want to go over there and follow me, you may catch me live. You guys can talk to me live or see me build crafting or testing some stuff or maybe just running some hard mode content. And on TikTok, I'm going to try to post more regularly. I just have to get used to editing the TikToks. Anyways, that's enough me yapping. I appreciate you guys so much. If you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon if you want to be notified every time I upload. There's going to be an in-depth in-game Volby guide coming out next, so keep your eyes open for that. I know that's highly requested. And there's going to be so much more first Descendant content to come this year. So keep your eyes open for that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.